Good morning, everybody. My name is John Miller. For those of you who've joined us before, thanks for joining again. I wanted to take a quick moment to introduce our presenter for today. For those of you joining us for the first time, Scott DeLong is our presenter. He is the founder of Lead to Goals. He's been an entrepreneur his entire life, all the way from age of 16 until recently when he exited successfully his second business that he had built. He built all those businesses as bootstrap entrepreneur endeavors, which means he did them on his own, no funding. So his passion now lies in helping companies work with their executives to rid themselves of outdated management beliefs, to understand and appreciate and master leaders' mindset. His promise to his clients that he works with today are that the techniques he coaches will bring tremendous benefits to the organization and beyond. It extends to the whole person. So not just about the work persona, but also the relationships that someone might have in their life. So these soft skills are beneficial inside and outside of the office. One quick note before we get started, for any of you joining us today, feel free, if you have any questions, you can go ahead and put them in the chat or use the little hand raise icon on Zoom, and we'll do our best to answer those in real time. So thanks again for joining us today for turning a group into a team. With that being said, here's Scott DeLong.
Thanks, John. I appreciate that. Hey, I'm going to go a little further on that. If you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. I want you during this process, during the 35, 40 minutes that we're going to be spending together, lecture style, I guess you'd say, I want you to come up with 2 questions that you want to ask about the content or something that's happened to you at work or something. So think about a couple questions that might make this more impactful for you. Write those questions down and either send them into John, or at the end, we're going to have a question and answer period that I'd really like for you to ask. I notice a couple familiar faces online already. I appreciate that. Thanks for showing up. And for those of you who have not been to our presentations before, kind of want to let you know what the purpose of this is. So as an older guy, part of my life is the rest of my life is giving back. And I've done a lot of business ventures, but I've also done a lot of educational venture, and I found that being a teacher is probably the most fun thing I can do, helping people see the light. Now, here's the caveat. I'm not going to tell you anything that you don't already know. I believe this wholeheartedly, that everything that we need to know, we learn by the time we're in kindergarten. And turning a group into a team is as simple as that. It is how to play in a sandbox, right? Just getting people from different viewpoints and different colors of skin and different ways of thinking and different genders and all of that, learning how to play together and for what purpose. So that's really what we're going to be talking about today. It's going to be 35, 45 minutes. So I want to set the expectations. I've been on a couple of webinars lately that have said things like, hey, stick around to the end, you're going to get something free. They don't tell you when the end is. I want to be really clear. We will be ending at 11 o'clock. The presentation will probably be ending around 10:40 or so, and that'll give you some time for the questions that I've asked you to think about that you want to ask. So with that, we're gonna start rolling. The purpose of this webinar series is certainly to give back, to enlighten folks and let them know a little bit about the things I've learned. But I'm also in business. So throughout the presentation, there's going to be a couple resources that we're going to provide you that are free. So get your cell phone out. We've got QR codes. These are free resources to help you along your journey. And then at the end, there is going to be one highly discounted program that if you want to go deeper into this and facilitated and deeper into this, then we're going to be having a workshop. So I want to let you know up front, the purpose. I am in business and I want to give back. All right. So with that, all teams are made from groups, but not all groups are teams. Make sense to folks? And the difference between a group and a team, there are, a group is a gathering of several individuals with some relationship or commonality. Really simple. A team is a group of individuals who not only share a common goal, have a unified vision, a process to work together, hold each other accountable, and develop trust with each other. I'm going to talk a lot today about the cross-functional team. And this is a team coming from different areas. Maybe somebody from accounting and somebody from sales and somebody from marketing and somebody from operations all working together. And we'll talk about the reason that we're going to want to do that. So you're going to be thinking about building a team from people that think differently than you, and yet it is still possible to come up with that definition of a team. In fact, in 1992, two scholars wrote in the McKinsey Quarterly 5 levels of group and team. And the first one is a working group. And I'm just going to go through these definitions really quick, and I'm going to read these. But while I'm doing that, I want you to think about a recent business group, business team, if you call it that you've been on and where they fit on this spectrum, right? And we can talk about that at the end as well. So a working group is a small group of individuals who interact primarily to share information, which allows individuals to make decisions to enable them to perform their functions. There's no sense of purpose or self among the members. It's all purpose of self, but no sense of membership in a group, the common purpose or accountability to each other. That's a working group. So a potential team, the second one, a potential team is a group of individuals who come together when there is a clear and significant need. This group lacks a shared sense of purpose and may lack the discipline to organize a common work approach. We've all been in those. A pseudo team, this is a scary one for me. A pseudo team is a collection of individuals with no need to share information, no common purpose, whose own self goals may detract from the needs of other members. In a pseudo team, the time individuals spend with other members of this pseudo team detracts from the available time for the individual to do their work. We've all heard that, oh, we have too many meetings in this company, right? It happens all the time. And that's because we have built pseudo teams. People that believe that you are wasting their time because we don't have a reason for us to gather. Yet somebody's forcing us to. So a true team, small group of people with complementary skills who are committed to a shared sense of purpose, common goals, a process to work together, hold each other accountable, and the most important piece on this is have trust with each other. There's one level above that, and this, you need to get to a team before you can go to a high-performing team, but that's a group of that meets with all the conditions of a real team, and the members exhibit care for the other members. On a high-functioning team, build care into that. We're going to talk about how to do that a little bit here. But we're going to go to the cross-functional teams and why they're so difficult. Differing priorities between the departments. You call them silos, if you will, within businesses. Common goal may be easy, but unifying under a shared vision can be tough. We can all agree we want to do this thing, but why we're doing this thing may not be in alignment with each other. Personalities within departments and job functions, cultural differences, distributed leadership, who's in charge, how are we going to work through this, accountability, a conflict resolution process, having a good conflict resolution process, the team configuration and size, and we don't know each other. So that gets to the issue of trust. So why bother? What's the point? Michael Jordan believes in teams. Talent wins games, but teamwork and intelligence win championship. I look at it a little bit different. Bottom line is teams do more than groups. They get more done. They accomplish more, and they accomplish more better, right? And the reason is because they have collaboration that will improve the outcomes. So everyone's heard of the word synergy before. And synergy is just a matter of 1 + 1 = something greater than 2. So I come up with an idea, and then Terry comes up with a different idea. We talk through those differences, and somehow something better than either my original idea or her original idea will come out of that. Almost always, if we have a good communication process, and we'll talk about that a little bit later as well. And then the last thing is, and this is something that we don't think about a lot, and that is to mitigate the unintended consequences. There are consequences for every action. Some of them are positive, some of them are negative. What the team can do, and especially a cross-functional team can do, is they can think from a different mindset, from an accounting mindset versus a sales mindset, and say, well, I see why you might like that. However, here is the impact that's going to be upon us or the company from my perspective. And then having the debate about that can only help mitigate those unintended consequences. If we just filled the room full of salespeople, we will end up with a sales solution, one that is good for us. If we fill the group with a cross-functional group, we will have a better chance of getting a solution that is better for the company. Again, that whole vision versus the mission piece, right? And that is a bigger picture, and going out to what is good for us as an organization, or even us as a department, because even departments, you can have cross-functional functionality within a department. But what we're looking for is not what's best for me, but what's best for us. Teams do that. Talked a little bit about trust earlier, and that's one of the conditions. I think it's probably the primary condition that needs to be built. And everyone says, well, yeah, I trust these folks. I think I think they can do their job. I think they're willing to do their job. They're smart enough. Yeah, I can trust them. They've shown in the past that they do it. And we usually have built trust based on just that cognitive level. That's saying they have not only the skill set, but they have the benevolence or the willingness to be able to get the thing done. I'm going to argue that there's a second level of trust that needs to be developed if, in fact, you want to have that high-functioning team. And remember, the difference between a team and a high-functioning team is show care for each other. We don't spend enough time with that. That's called affective trust. Affective trust means I like you. It is the trust that is developed through human interaction, finding out about the person, not just the function. It's a process to do that. We've done a lot of studies on this, and almost every business organization, every functional business organization that I've seen, people that are doing well and growing, and frankly, if you're not doing well and growing, you can't afford to bring me in to work with your team anyway. So most of the companies I work with are, I'm going to sell it functional. However, most of the functional groups will all believe that everybody in their department is strong. And we've tested it. So we bring in 8 to 10 people, cross-functionality, and we give them this trust survey. And how much do you trust this team, meaning these group of people that are in this room right now? And what we've always found is the cognitive level of trust has been very high. And the affective trust level has been very low. So we take them through a process, and this happens in two of the different courses that we teach. One is the communications course, and the other is the team building course. Take them through a process where we get to know each other, what they like, what they don't like, what bothers them, what makes them excited, all those kind of things. And we work slowly into this because it can be a little dangerous, right? Being vulnerable in front of other people. We walk through that, but by the end of the course, the affective trust has shot through the roof, simply because the more we are among us, the more we're going to like people, especially if we teach them some of the concepts of humility, vulnerability, and the most important one, I believe, is empathy. Courses are designed to do that, right? We have exercises that will get people into those stages. So the affective trust is a really important part. So this goes into what we consider our circle of trust. And the circle of trust is a theory that I created a few years back when I was in grad school, and it works really simple. And every webinar you'll be on with me, you're going to hear about this because this is my thing, right? This is the one that I think that I really strongly believe in. And it's really simple. Most of us build trust with others by doing what we say we're going to do. And you do that enough times, and you end up starting to trust the person that you're dealing with. Really simple. Although it takes a long time to do that. You have to do it over and over and over, and eventually we start trusting each other. That's the way trust is built traditionally. It is a long, slow process. This process, called the circle of trust, does it a lot faster, not only faster, but deeper. So people that have some level of trust with each other, let's say the cognitive trust, Going through this process will get them to that affective trust as well and make a deeper level. And it starts with respect. And this is the type of respect that is different than what you might have grown up with. I grew up in an era where I was taught that respect is earned, it's not given. Anyone else hear that before? Yeah, I disagree with that. Now, respect can be earned too, but this level of respect, if we want to build trust with others, is the respect for human dignity, the respect that you have wants and needs, and you're trying to live a good life, and you're trying to do these things as well, and you have something to say. So showing somebody that, starting with that level of respect, walking into a relationship and saying, you have some value, I want to find out what that is. It goes into a Stephen Covey concept that's called listen to understand, which is diametrically opposed to what most of us do, which is listen to reply. When we're in a conversation with somebody, we can't wait to jump into that conversation and say, yeah, me too, or no, I disagree with you. It happens all the time, right? We get into the dialogue and debate and discussion. And the fact of the matter is that we're actually pushing people away, even when we're agreeing with them. Why? Because we're not listening to their story, to their why, to their purpose. We're jumping in on something that they said that we're trying to make a connection. We have good intentions. We're trying to make a connection. Yeah, me too, right? And we do that a lot. And the fact of the matter is I haven't even gotten to their point. So listen and understand is a pretty deep process. And it really talks about asking more questions rather than jumping in and giving the answer, going deeper with the individuals and finding out a little bit more about them. Okay. After that, this is the concept that I learned in entrepreneur organization, EO, share from experience. They call it Gestalt language protocol in there, but sharing from experience simply means this. I don't give advice. I might want to talk to you about something and how I felt about. I had a similar situation and this is what I did and here's how it felt to me. That's sharing from your experience as opposed to, well, you should, I think you ought to, right? Which is, we do that a lot, right? If you would just do this thing, you'd be better off. Well, the fact of the matter is you can't do that. Well, you can do that. We do it all the time. It's not an effective tool because one, you don't have the life experiences that the other person had. You may have a similar story to what they're experiencing right now, but you really don't know their answer. And the fact of the matter is they probably do know their answer. They just need an opportunity to get it out and hear from a different perspective. And not tactically on to do this, right? It is, I tried it and here's how it felt. Those are the type of stories that resonate with people. Those are the type of stories that make sense. They will come up with their own answer. And if they can't, they will ask a direct question. But generally, when people are telling you about their troubles, they're just wanting to vent. They're just wanting to be heard. They're wanting to be understood. They do not want you solving their problems, and they will end up resenting you for it if you do, and you'll end up resenting them when they don't take your advice. It's just counterproductive. It's counterproductive to be giving advice. Unless specifically asked for it, no, I need to hear what you think about this. So sharing from experience as opposed to telling people what to do. And then the last part is the part that we've all gone through is delivering on the promise, which is doing what you say you're going to do, making tough decisions and living through and being honorable to your word. So I believe, and I'll show you a little bit later in a diagram, that this process works to build trust not only faster, but deeper. In fact, I believe that if you get through this process just in 3 cycles, you will develop a relationship, one that's built on trust. So here's the first offering, first free offering. My partner and I, we do, my partner works for another company, but I'm partner in this podcast, and I put out a podcast that talks about leadership issues, leadership, communication, all those sorts of things. We did one I think a few months back now called The Speed of Trust, and this QR code will take you right to that. Our podcasts are about 30 minutes in length, and they're conversational. So if you're interested in podcasts, you're driving to work, you're doing whatever you're doing, and you want to just slap something in, this is worth taking a picture of this QR code because it'll take you right to there. I actually see 2 people on this call right now. I think that's what I'm looking at. 2 people on that have been guests on it. And they both have their cameras on. So thank you for that as well. So I'm going to talk about that real quick. Most of us, when we get in these large webinars, we turn our cameras off. And I understand that. When we're working with groups, I prefer the cameras on because I want to see the reaction of the people. In fact, if you're willing, for those of you who have them off, I want to see how many people are willing to turn their cameras on right now and participate. Let me read the room a little bit. Let me find out who you are and what you're thinking and what you're smiling about and what you're frowning about as we go through this. It really kind of helps the presentation and drives this. I don't do this by script. I have a PowerPoint that gives me ideas and thoughts, and then I go with it. And your reactions to what I'm talking about do matter. So you'll see me scanning around quite a bit now that I see more cameras on. So if you're interested in a free podcast, this one, listen, I have fun doing it. I think you might like it. About every other one, we have a guest come in, and sometimes it's just Vince and I sitting around a table, having a cup of coffee or sharing a beer and talking business concepts. And they're actually, it's pretty good content. We disagree sometimes, we agree quite often, but we disagree sometimes, and that's even more fun. So take a picture of the QR code, or I'll switch off this real quick and we'll move on to more of the presentation. I talked a little bit about communication as a process. Now, if you think back on when we talked about what does it take to create a team, a process to do things was in that definition on creating a team. And I think this is a process that's really important, and how to communicate with others within a group. And trust me, it is more difficult on Zoom than it is face-to-face. So my recommendation is, if we're going to want to really build that affective trust, it is easier to do it if we can have a face-to-face group than a Zoom group. However, that's not always possible these days with all the work from home and the remote this and that, and people coming and going. If you can get face-to-face, that is the strongest way in order to communicate with others. There's a lot of reasons for that. But I tell people this. I mean, I asked you to turn your cameras on, and those of you who did, I appreciate. When your cameras are on, I can read some of your emotions. I mean, I can see what you're thinking, or at least guess at what I think you're thinking. I may not know everything about what's going on, but I can see that based on the facial expressions and maybe a little bit of body language. But when I'm in a room with somebody, and you can do this, this isn't special to me. This is all of us. When you're in a room with somebody and you're looking in their eyes, you can read their soul. I mean, you can just go deeper. You can just find out more about the person. So I'm not a big fan of the work from home movement because we lose that. I get it. It's the way the world's going to go and all that, but we lose the ability to really connect at a human level with people, because you can see deeper into them when you're face to face, and you certainly can on Zoom. So the rest of the process is showing respect for others, going back to that circle of trust concept and showing respect, and asking clarifying questions, finding out more, right? If anyone's ever read anything about the Toyota Way and something called the 5 Whys, right? And basically what they say is that if you go down you keep asking, something happens and you ask why. Somebody gives you an answer and you ask why. And somebody gives you an answer, you ask why. By the time you get to the 4th or 5th why, you get to the root cause of the thing. So this process that I talk about, this listening process, is really talking as well, but it's asking questions and getting people to get to their why. Word of caution here, the word why is very accusatory. You just don't want to keep saying why all the time, right? It sounds like, why are you so stupid? Why would you do something like that? Why would you wear that shirt? You know, it sounds like that. It sounds negative. So there's a way of getting to the why without asking why, and that's by asking open-ended questions. And maybe even deferring a little bit by saying, well, I hear what you're saying. I just don't really understand. Can you explain a little bit deeper? Can you tell me a little bit more? And going down that path, tell me, explain, describe. There's an acronym that I used called TED, tell, explain, or describe. If you start a question with that, you will get a story. The answer's in the story. And there's also something, one of the other reasons I want your cameras on is so I can show you that this really works. In that story, you're going to hear keywords. How do you know it's a keyword? Because I'm going to come up a little bit. I'm going to get animated a little bit with my face. Ask your next question about the thing that animated me. Made me happy, made me sad, made me angry, maybe whatever. Ask a question about that thing. That's the important thing. And you can see that on people's faces. You can feel it in their aura, in their body, right? You can see that. So go down to the 5 whys, and this is the communication process that I'm talking about. When we're talking from different departments, I keep using accounting and sales. And the reason I do that is we think differently, right? We just have different needs with our own department. But if you, as a salesperson, understood the wants, needs, desires, things that are important to the accounting person, you have a better opportunity to come up with a better solution for us. Similarly, if they understood where you're coming from as well. So doing this 5 why process is really the basics of the communication process that we talk about.
Hey, Scott.
Yes, sir.
I had a quick question that I think works well with what you just kind of were talking about.
Okay.
So the question is, would you consider it a best practice to build teamwork to ask everyone to turn on cameras on Zoom? And if so, how do you recommend handling a situation when people are reluctant?
Yeah, well, it depends on the circumstance. So in this, we have no authority over each other. You're here by your grace to want to hear what this presentation had to hear. I can't make you do anything, right? So if you're working with your team, there certainly is reluctance. And I got into this really good debate over social media on this the other day, where someone said that the facilitator who forces you to turn their camera on is doing it for their own ego. It's not true. There may be some of that, right? Everyone's got egos. There may be some of that to say, hey, can I get them to do such and such? But that's not the reason to turn your camera on. To turn your camera on is so that we can interact as human beings, rather than me lecturing to you. So we do this when we're building teams in the form of ground rules. And as a facilitator, you can influence those ground rules, but I wouldn't recommend demanding they follow your rules, the rules you set. And the reason being is because if, let's say I'm your boss, right? And I have the power, I can tell you what to do. You'll do it. I'll get commitment from you. I mean, a compliance from you. You'll do it. But if I allowed the group to create the ground rules and they were your rules, I now have commitment. I'd much rather have commitment over simple compliance. All right. So now to go a little bit deeper. How do we get these ground rules? Part of it's peer pressure. Certainly, if we have a group of 8 people and 7 of them are adamant against turning on their cameras because they don't have the space for it, their bed's a mess behind them, whatever the situation, right? They're adamant that they're just not going to turn on the rules. There's not a lot of chance that you as an individual are going to be able to talk the other 7 people into turning their cameras on when you're really outnumbered like that. But most groups that I found, we have a split. 3 or 4 think it's a good idea, 3 or 4 don't. That's part of the discussion, right? You have a debate about the concept. You bring it up as hey, what do you folks think about this? And there's a process that I like to use to do that. So I'm not as demanding, but my ideas are heard. And that is, here's the problem, discuss the problem, discuss a potential solution, and then throw the question out to the crowd or the individual. What do you think? That's one of those open-ended questions that you can't just say yes or no to. They're going to tell you a story. And in that story becomes a couple things. The first one, this is going back to communication as a process now, right? The first portion of that is, if you feel as though I am listening to you, really listening, trying to understand, listening to understand, the first thing that happens, you take a deep breath, your shoulders drop a little bit, and you feel a little safer, right? That person's that's showing a little bit of care, willing to listen to me. So that's the first reason to get into this dialogue and to say, what do you think? And look for what it is that they have to say. But the second reason is, and this one's a little more diabolical, is that they're going to give you information on how to argue with them. They're going to give you points that you can use in your presentation on why it's important to you, right? So I'm not saying doing it in a manipulative, listening in a manipulative way, but there's information, there's data that they will provide you that will help you form either one, change your opinion, which is possible, right? Make your opinion better, or use their data in order to support your position. And it kind of pins people into a spot where it's kind of difficult to defend that, right? So the listening portion and asking the question, I have a potential idea. Now think about that. Identify the problem. Here's a potential solution, not the solution. We should, such and such is not what I'm talking about. I've got an idea. Why don't we try this? What if we were to try this? What do you think? Is a great way to get into dialogue on that. It might be the answer to your question. Can I force people to turn on their camera? Nope. And even if I could, would I want to? Probably not. But I can encourage and influence them to do that. Take the power that you have and utilize that in a productive manner. Not going to be 100%, not going to be 100%, but you got a better chance with this approach than you do just saying, well, I'm outnumbered 7-1. Get the dialogue moving and that way you'll get your points in as well.
Hey, Scott.
Yes.
Someone else had a question. Wesley.
Hi, Scott. It's Wesley here from South Africa.
Thank you.
Quick one. I'm basically building a team from scratch, and like a lot of the company, all the other staff members have seen what we're doing, and they want to get involved. Do you think it's a good idea to involve the whole company in the sales training? All the management team, anybody who wants to be involved?
Well, I'm going to give you an answer that I always give. It depends, right? And it depends on what the purpose is in this case and the best method to get to that purpose. Research tells you that the best numbers for a small group to become a team end up being somewhere between 5 and 10 members of a group. Why? That's small enough that everybody's input can be heard, understood, and valued. If we get into a one-to-many situation, like there's 100 people that want to be in a group, much like this, it's going to be a lecture. That's really all we can do. Mel doesn't have an opportunity to talk because somebody else wants to, and all of that. So it depends on your purpose. If you're disseminating information, you can do that. You can have a larger group. That group probably will not become a team. I don't see how that's going to happen.
In the morning impacts, getting anybody excited to go to work rather than, thinking of it as just another job, that they want to get in for Hopper State so they can meet with everybody and scream and shout and get excited. And, like I say, they're just asking me if they can join, and I see no problem with it. But obviously I want to keep the focus around the sales team, and just because
let's hold that question for a little bit, because I've got a slide on how to create a group, how to create this team concept as well. So let's go through that. So here's our second offer, and I've had really good success with this. So I'm in the middle of writing a book, actually towards the end of writing a book right now. And when I finish a chapter and my editor works through some of the, fixes my bad writing, right? Basically is what ends up happening. When I finish a chapter, I send that out to 5 or 6 people that I know and trust in the business community, and even some that are in nonprofits and other places as well. And what I'm looking for when I do that is a true and honest critique of the work. Done this the last 2 webinars that we've done, where I've given the opportunity for someone in this group to say, hey, I'd love to critique your work. And 1, gives you a lot of content that you're not paying for, but 2, you can tell me what's missing, right? The things that you like, things you don't like, what's missing, how can you improve? This is really what I'm looking for. When I talk about critique, it is important to me, and this goes into a different course that we teach on leadership. It's important for me to recognize this fact. When people are criticizing me, telling me what I've done wrong, I have learned to look at that as a positive event, because from their point of view, they're trying to help me. If they weren't trying to help me, they wouldn't bother. So they're giving me feedback that they believe from their point of view is helpful. It's not always easy to receive. Trust me, I get it. It's not always easy to receive. But the fact of the matter is, I'm not going to grow if I don't know what I'm doing wrong or what I could be doing better. And if I believe that I was just the smartest guy here, I wouldn't need your help. But I believe in this concept that we are smarter than me. So I'm making an offer to some folks in this group here. If you are interested and willing to do the work, send me an email, scott@leadtogoals.com. I'll send you a chapter, and I'm looking for a critique. I need you to read it. It takes about a half an hour to read a chapter. That's about it, right? So if you don't have the time, I get it. But if you're interested, the one that we're up to right now is the chapter on vulnerability, which is the most controversial chapter in this book. Not a really easy subject to talk to business leaders about being vulnerable. So if you want to, send me an email. I'll send you a chapter, within 3 or 4 weeks, if you send me a critique back, and be as harsh as you want. It's okay. I don't mind. I know you're only doing it to try to make it better. Okay. So that's the second offering we have. So let's talk about creating the group. There are really 5 things that you need to think about when building your group. You want somebody with knowledge, having a level of expertise, talent, that you know that they can get their work done, right? Reliability, that they're going to show up and do the work. Curiosity. This is one we don't think about a lot. They're willing to learn from others within your group, not just wanting to dump all their stuff on you and make you do what they think is the right thing. They may be right. I'm not saying that they're not, but if you go with the "we are smarter than me" concept, even their brilliant idea can be improved with the thoughts of this other diverse group that we have together, right? So that's what I want to build a group. We've had groups, and Rebecca was part of one where we had, I think, 14 people on it, 13, 14, something like that, a big number, more than I would choose. I would have gotten down to 10 if it was up to me, but 13, 14 people within this group. And the cool part about it is that they fit all of these. They had knowledge, they had talent, they had reliability, they had curiosity, and they were willing. And that group, nod your head if you agree, Rebecca, turned out tremendous work. Yeah, and she was one of the leaders of this group and kind of took charge of this. And the output that they came up with was brilliant, much better than I could have done, much better than Rebecca could have done by herself, right? Because we had the impact of all these people to create that. The establishing the ground rules is an important piece. And again, going to establish those based on the group creating the rules. You as the leader or facilitator can bring up thoughts and ideas like, well, what do you think about eating while we're in our meeting, right? And they talk about what people feel about, should we be able to bring our lunch in here or not, or drinking, or what they're drinking, or the use of electronics, or all the different things that you've seen that have gone wrong in meetings. Bring it up. One that always goes wrong in meetings, more than one person talking at a time, right? Not focusing and paying attention to the person who's actually speaking. If you let the group make that rule, you might bring it up as a suggestion. What do you think about one person speaking at a time, right? And you've got commitment because they're the ones that said, that's important to me. And when they do it, if they do, right? Good chance that they won't, since they made the rule, but if they do, it's really easy to enforce. Hey, Amber, weren't you one of the ones that thought it was important to, right? Really simple to get the rules. So letting them create the rules. And what I suggest is everyone come in prepared with the things that they hate about meetings, the violators, right? I'm not talking about individuals, but the thing that gets violated. Those things will all come up and people will buy in. Identifying the desired outcomes, that's really important. And guess what? When we walk into most cross-functional groups, the outcomes differ based on the departments that they came from. You think it's really simple. Everyone thinks like me. We're just going to come in and we're going to increase sales, or we're going to, whatever it is, right? That's what we're trying to do. But when you hear from the other side that they have a differing opinion, we need to coalesce around that difference of opinion and agree on what the outcomes are going to look like. We may not know the final answers yet at the beginning while we're working through this, but at least, so for instance, you might have some specific number that you're trying to hit or whatever. That may change in the course of the discussion, and it probably will. But what we want to do is come up with a round, generic, wrong word, a wide range group of things that we want to be able to accomplish. What specifically they are and how we're going to do them, that's to be decided later. But you start with this stuff up front and then building relationships. Go back into that circle of trust concept. And if you look at, I think it's, this slide right here. So we've taken this circle of trust and added and created a cycle out of it. And I mentioned earlier that if you get through this cycle 3 times, you'll end up with a relationship. The first time you have to walk in with the intention. I want to be able to do this. I want to make a group. I want this group to become a team. Walk through the cycle and you'll get into the authenticity. You believe that people also want it and find out from others. And you see it happen again. You'll start getting that next level of respect, not just respect for the humanity of the person, but respect for the individual, because they participated just as you have in this process. And you get that. Once you get that respect, building trust is really easy. Once you have trust with somebody, a relationship is even easier. I have never seen a positive relationship built unless trust has come first. Okay, so here's the offer that I want you to really think about. On Friday, September 2nd, we're going to take this 45-minute presentation and turn it into a 3.5, 4-hour presentation, not presentation, but a workshop, interactive workshop where the participants are actually a part of the teaching process. So it's a 2-way cycle. We'll provide you the information, we'll provide you with the exercises, and you, the group, will provide us with best practices, things that I hadn't thought of, things that someone else thinks might work, and ideas and interesting. We normally charge $400 for this 3.5, 4-hour session, but because you've come to this presentation, we're going to make it a $99 deal. This is only going to last till tomorrow, because it is the entrance point to what I'm hoping happens, right? So why I'm willing to do at this is because if I had 14, 15 people come in to this workshop, 2 or 3 of them are going to say, we need this in my company. They're going to introduce me to the boss. We're going to get a course built out of it. So anyway, it's an entrance point to get to sales. So I had told you we're in business and I am trying to sell stuff. This is the thing I'm selling right now. It's as simple as that. Couple free offers. And then this is something that if you want to take advantage of this, it is Friday, September 2nd, just one day, 1 4-hour session, 9 o'clock to 1 o'clock Pacific time, $99. Take a screenshot of this. You don't have to sign up now. But if you sign up, in the next 24 hours, you'll get this special price. We're going to hold the workshop anyway. Everyone else is going to be paying the full price for it, though. Okay. That's it as far as the sales function here. So we also have another free offer. I've written what we call mini ebook. It's 15, 16 pages long. It's a short read. It's 15, 20-minute read on some of the concepts. It goes a little bit deeper than the webinar, but certainly is not as deep as the workshop would go. And if you're interested in receiving a free copy of that, here's the QR code for this. Scan that, you'll go onto the website. We're going to ask you for your email and your name because I want to know who we're sending this to. But we'll send you the mini ebook on turning a group into a team. I think you'll enjoy reading it. I think it'll help folks. It may not go as deep as you need to in the practical application, which is the exercises and those sorts of things that we walk through in the workshop, but it's a really good resource. So if you're interested in getting that, take a scan of the QR code. Question time now. I asked you at the beginning of this to come up with a couple questions. What do you want to know more about? What didn't get answered during this? What do you want to challenge about this?
Scott,
Yes.
we had a question come in from Brennan Williams. He wanted to ask a question. He messaged, but said he'd be willing to wait till you got to this section. So,
Okay.
yep.
Hi, Scott.
Hello.
How you doing?
My life is wonderful.
Brennan from South Africa. I'm glad you're well. Thank you very much. Very insightful. We were talking about team creation, and I'm in entrepreneurial development, so I help entrepreneurs to grow with incubators, right? I'm creating new teams for this. We have a slightly different approach from the norm. I've given people the why and the how, and then I'm asking individuals who are interested literally to tell me what work they want to do. I'm inviting them to write their own job description. We have two awesome candidates so far who have actually kicked off, and one in sales, another one in project management. Do you think that type of back to front approach is a good way of building a team, because it's taking a lot of time?
I haven't seen it before, and the thing that I would question is I'm giving people their why. And maybe I misinterpreted that.
Not their why.
Okay.
The organizational why. So, for example, to make South Africa a more entrepreneurial place.
Okay.
And then the why, the how is about how we go about doing that.
Yeah. So I think that's a good approach, and then we're going to go a little bit deeper into that as I'm building this team after we've gone through the ground rules and those things that we talked about. I would want, especially if they're coming from different places, I'd want to find out what their why is. Why is it important to you to become an entrepreneur? Why did this mission sit with you and that you wanted to hear more about and see if you wanted to participate in the group? So if you can get to their why and others can hear their why, you will build a team much faster that way. So I think the approach may work. Sure.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Okay. Joan has a hand up.
Yeah, I read a book by Brené Brown about vulnerability, especially in her book Dare to Read. And then, so my question: how have you used vulnerability to help make a group into a team? Specifically, if you can give us some example strategies.
Sure, I'll give you really quick anecdote. Okay. And vulnerability is not something I grew up with. Men were supposed to be tough and strong and not show any weakness, and people think vulnerability is weakness. And especially if you're a Brené Brown friend, you're going to find out that vulnerability is not a weakness, it is a strength. I'm going to go a step further and to say that vulnerability, me showing vulnerability, has been the most attractive quality I have ever utilized in my life. Okay. Not my big fast car, not my fancy watches, not how pretty I am, not how any of that stuff doesn't compare to being vulnerable, to showing yourself to others. That draws people in.
Thank you.
Okay. Scott, how about you?
My question is this: I own a digital marketing agency, and my teams are scattered throughout the world, and they are younger, typically in their 20s and 30s. Do you find your leadership techniques or strategies contextual, based upon different locations, or is it standardized and applied across whether the demographic or ages or locations?
I'm not an international expert at all. So, but talking about the age and gender gaps that we might, and race gaps that we might have within the United States, I can speak to that. And what I have found is that the communication techniques that I've talked about and the team building process that we talk about works universally throughout the country and through different age groups. Don't get me wrong. There is some pushback at first because of some of the vulnerability that we talk about, right? Some of the empathy is not usually a problem for people. They get that, but the vulnerability piece is difficult. And people say, well, I don't want anyone to know anything about my personal life, right? And so there is some pushback on that. But when we break that barrier and we break it through me being vulnerable to you, showing that what's called psychological safety within a group. And creating psychological safety is the lack of fear that people have about being able to tell their truth. I can tell you universally, at least and I don't know, again, not international, and it may be true there too, but that people want to be heard. Give them a chance to be heard. You will put yourself at a higher level in their mindset. You
Excellent.
are the person willing to listen.
Thank you. And just a last follow-up question. During the workshop, the 3.5-hour workshop, will we come away with a game plan that we can apply to our teams that's applicable right then?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So yes. So in this, we talk about all these concepts, right? But then we actually do exercises for each of them so that you can say how to work this, how to practice this. Here's what happened in my life and all those kind of things. And then at the end, we come up with a summary to talk about the different processes that you can deploy tomorrow within your organization or your family. And John mentioned at the beginning that the work that we talk about not only improves your business life, but it improves your personal life as well. And you want your family to be a team, these processes work there too. The communication structures work there as well. So you will end up with actionable items that you can take home the very same day and start applying. Doesn't mean you're going to be an expert after just a 3.5 hour, right? Because this stuff, we got to get rid of a lot of old habits that we've had. And we got to start building that trust. And especially if you get, the closer you are to people, it takes longer to break that, because in my case, I've taught people for 60 years on how to be around me. Well, we have to work around that, right? We have to go backtrack and say, this is who I am now. This is what I'm trying to do. And they need to feel safe, and they need to trust that that is going to be true. So with your family, it might be more difficult to implement these things than it would be at work, because the family had more lessons to undo, right? The things that we've done to them in the past.
Makes sense. Can I share it with my team, or are they available to come on it with me, or is it just for me? Either one is fine. I'm just curious.
In the background, that would be fine. But this is meant just for the people that have come on here, right? And typically, if we're going to do a whole team, it's a whole different thing. We charge for a team. But if there's someone in your background listening in and watching you work, I can't monitor that anyway, right? It's not going to be recorded. So because we want people to be able to speak freely and not worry about what might be said, we have a lot of trust built. What's said in the room stays in the room, all those kind of things, other than the lessons. But if someone's in the other side and listening in, what am I going to do about that? Okay. Christian.
Hi, Scott. Christian, I'm coming from Zimbabwe. I'm doing business development at an organization that's in Malta industry. You spoke about vulnerability, and that's one of the tactics I've used. However, doesn't that just open up for constructive criticism turning into destructive criticism? Because now that
it's done.
Now that maybe part of the team that is not gelling well would find reasons of criticizing you not in a constructive way, but more of a destructive manner. How do you tackle that?
Well, so again, the definition of vulnerability is trusting that people are going to take your information and not use it for harm. Now, I don't consider constructive criticism harm, but what I do consider is destructive, right? When they start using it as an attack mode to be harmed. So I'm going to say this, that I believe that it potentially can be misused. This criticism that you're talking about starts as constructive and migrates into something else, but it depends on how you accept the criticism. Not 100% of the time. 5% of the world are narcissists or sociopaths. That's it, just 5%. Everyone else this works with. It will not work with those groups. They don't care about you. They never will. They're just going to use it for harm. Am I going to be vulnerable in front of a narcissist or a sociopath? Nope, I'm not. Not productive. I'm also going to find out pretty quick, and they're not going to be part of my group very long.
Perfect.
Hey, Scott,
yes.
We had a question come in here that was messaged. So The person's asking about, you phrased to encourage and offer good intentions attached to a request or suggestion. For example, when you said, please read my book, give me your honest feedback. I know that you'll want the best for this material. She's asking, is that part of charisma or is it an actual strategy for creating emotional safety?
I don't know. I'm not going to say I'm the most charismatic guy in the world. It's just part of who I want to become, is the person that recognizes that your criticism is there to help me. And does that make me more charismatic? Maybe. I'm not going to. I don't know. That's up for the audience to decide if that's true or not. But I think it's more than a strategy, right? There's a difference between wanting to appear one way and being that thing that you want to be. The chapter I'm writing right now is on humility, and admittedly, that's of the vulnerability, humility, and empathy. That's the one I'm not as good at, right? I grew up as an athlete thinking that I always got to be the best, and I got to show people, and I got to do this, and I got to win, I got to all that kind of. So humility is still difficult for me, but it is a humble act to ask for criticism, ask for critique. And I don't like to form it in the form of criticism. I like to use the word critique because that helps me frame it to say critique is helpful, criticism is harmful. That's how I differentiate those in my own mind. And you can use whatever language that you want to do that. But I think it's a willingness to be vulnerable, a willingness to show you my work and to listen to what you say. Now, how I accept that is on me and tells me whether or not you're going to provide me more assistance in the future. If I come off as defensive, yeah, but you're wrong because all that, you're going to stop giving me that, or you're going to escalate, it's going to turn into a fight. And so accepting the critique with humility and the recognition that people are trying to help me has allowed me to be a better human. Don't know if that's charisma or not, but it's allowed me to be a better human, feel better about myself, attract more people to me. Okay, we are at the end of our hour. I will stick around if people want to ask questions. I'm good with that. But don't feel obligated if you don't want to hear the answer. So if you have any more questions, go ahead and raise your hand. We'll call on you and we'll chat, because this is a fun conversation for me. But one more thing before we do that. Sorry, John. Next month is the strategy behind strategic planning. This is one of the most fun things I get to do in my world, is facilitate strategic planning retreats. And there's a process about this as well. So next month, Tuesday, September 20th, 10 a.m., sign up the way you did this time through LinkedIn and all that. It's available to you if you'd like to participate in that. And I want to thank you all for participating. Now, anyone that still wants to ask questions, I'm here. I saw a hand earlier. Did it go away? Probably ran out of time.
That was Scott. He said he had to jump on a call.
Okay. All right. Jake, good to see you.
I tried to have my kids poke in every once in a while you were talking. I got a big thunderstorm, so my audio wasn't working the first half, but I got it figured out. How you doing, Uncle Scott? I'm
doing wonderful. So you just missed the boring half. That's all. You got the good stuff.
Yeah. I caught the last half. I admire what you do. It's pretty cool.
Wonderful. All right. Any other questions before we sign off? Happy to stick around. If you're satisfied with what you got, get the mini ebook if you like. But if you really want to dive deeper into this, sign up for the workshop. There's a lot of good work that goes in there. Marco, just saw a hand come up. Nope. All right. Well, thank you all. I appreciate the attention, and let me know if we can help.